Hi, welcome to the channel where we will provide an alternative view to the common narrative. Firstly, before I start, uh, as you know, I live in South Africa and we have load shedding or blackouts, if you don't understand that term. And for the past week, we had level 6, which meant we had between 8 and 10 hours of no electricity for the day. And that had a severe impact on my ability to make videos. So I do apologize for that. And hopefully we will improve that. But just as a point of interest, there was a recent report from Kiev that they are only experiencing maybe one blackout per month. So even with all the destruction of the Russian missile attack on Ukraine, it seems to me power has been restored, which I, in any case, predicted it will be. But, well, here in South Africa, being in a non-war situation, well, we have a much more worse situation. So I do apologize for that. But today's first video, I'm going to try to take the opportunity to make multiple of them. Was a story about the recent confidential or secret documents released by a young guy in America. And I know lots of people have talked about it, but I would like to present my 2 cents of the story. So if you are interested, please continue watching. Hi, welcome back to the channel. Now, today we're going to talk about, or I would like to express my view about the recent leaks by a guy called Jack Teixeira. I've heard many pronunciations of his surname, so if I pronounce it differently, then, well, that's another version of it. But a lot of people have different names for him. So in my time, I would name him Jack Teixeira. But in any case, just a little bit of background. The guy is a 21-year-old National Guard airman from Massachusetts. He basically finished his school in 2020 and then immediately joined the National Guard, where he got his basic training. And then in October, and he got further training, and in October about 2021, he finally so-called graduated, and he was appointed as an IT specialist in the current job. Well, he's a very junior airman, and he's also part of the National Guard. Now, the National Guard is not a permanent member of the American military. They are basically called weekend warriors, or they can be employed on a not need to know, but need to use or need to be required basis to assist with tasks of the military. Now, this is already a problem for me. So this is a part-time employee, or he can be employed as a part-time employee. So he's not a permanent member, and he did receive his top secret clearance. But the question is, why would anybody of that stature, who is not a permanent member of the military, gain access to these types of documents? So that's the first question which I have to ask. And secondly, I don't know, I've been running the Linux operating system. Well, I'm an IT fanatic. I've been involved in IT since the start in 1980, when I was a student. And I'm fanatic about this, and I know a hell of a lot about IT. But I will acknowledge that even with my hell of a lot of knowledge about IT, I still know very, very little about the whole field, because the field is so vast and changes constantly. But in any case, I've been running a Linux operating system since, well, 2004, 2003. And if you have ever worked with Linux, then security is one of the major properties of this operating system. And you learn a lot. And if you have ever worked on servers, which I also have one, and I've created servers and permissions and so on, although you have access and you have top secret clearance, your access to any files is limited by the authoritarian principles of the operating system. And I mean, if you basically you have access to only certain directories. You have only certain access to certain files. If you want to really, you have to hack the system. But as soon as you start to hack the systems by employing, say, a password cracker and so on, then the system will pick it up, because these types of servers have incredible back-end monitoring software that is running, that can identify any attack, and they also keep a record of every and all transactions on the network. That means that if you access a file, that is recorded. If you read a file, that is recorded. And it's all basically recorded against your username and password, well, your username. The emails you get, everything is controlled, everything is recorded. And where does anybody else, and there are warning systems that if certain people that are not allowed to access certain information, then they are flagged, and then there are specialists who are permanent members of the intelligence services that do monitor these systems, will knowledge about this all. So the question is, firstly, top secret clearance doesn't give you access to all the files. It just gives you access to top secret documents that are made available. You have authorization to access those files. If you don't have authorization, then you don't get access to those files. I mean, lots of us have watched movies about spy and intelligence service and stuff like that. And I know a lot of those stuff is bullshit and so on. But we do know that they are being monitored and being recorded. And like I said, if you ever worked on a server or intelligence type of network, then everything is controlled and everything is recorded. And that is, and if you know anything about a hacker, then the first thing that a hacker does, that when he penetrates a system, he removes the breadcrumbs or the traces of his access, which means modifying the log files. But that is just a little bit of background. So I don't believe this guy had access to all the documents. But just for what amazes me on the other side is that the New York Times and the media, I think it was New York Times, and I can't remember now which television network, were the first to assist the American government to identify Teixeira as the culprit of the release of information, and in order to safeguard the government from whatever reasons. But if you now looked over the last couple of weeks, these same institutions that are trying to so-called prevent the leak are now disseminating more and more information on what was leaked. So that's quite funny. And another point that should be remembered in the context of the whole situation. But in any case, Teixeira, another property, no, that's not the right saying. But something else about Teixeira is that he was a gamer. He was not a patriot or anything like else that had discovered some stuff and wanted to make it public. No, he was a simple 21-year-old gamer. Now, if you know modern or the new generation of people, kids, most of them are gamers. And if you know gamers, they are gamers. They are not anything else. They are not like, they live in the world of the games, first-person shooters or real strategy games or whatever you want to call it. It doesn't really matter. But that gives you a certain type of character. And these type of people, they are not rebels. They are not concerned about the world around them. Or for him to release those documents in order to expose the government, no, that's not a character of a person that does that. In any case, so now he had a small group and about 20 or 30 people, and well, a gamer is bragging, and that I can understand, that he may try to make some information available to his group in order to brag about whatever he wants to brag about. That is a typical character of them. But it would have stayed in the group, except for another 17-year guy. Just let me get his name here. Luco or something like that. Luca. Yeah, a guy called Luca was a 17-year-old from California who's then decided to publish it onto a Discord group. So it's not Teixeira that actually posted the information to the world. It was this guy, Luca. But at the end of the day, Teixeira basically had signed the confidential or the top secret documents, so he's obliged or he's forced by his own agreements to abide by not making these documents available to any unauthorized persons. So he could have stayed away, and well, again, according to the newspaper, about 300 documents started more or less in October of last year. Then there is now some information he started already in February last year, before the SMO. I don't know what to believe anymore. It's not really relevant, so it's not really important. So the question is basically, well, is it really that serious? One can look at the information, and there's a little bit of, it says in the first ones, I saw some documents. I didn't see all of them. The most famous ones are little small paragraphs, photographs of documents, which is again suspicious already. So, but I will get to it just now. So you have these small paragraphs that are photos taken photos of, and it describes certain maybe views or events and so on. Then there are a couple of big presentation slides of the proposed Ukrainian force composition and how much vehicles and how much armor and other weapon systems they require, and when will they be trained and be finished with the training, and when will they let the military equipment be delivered and stuff like that. So it's basically an organogram. Is that the right word? But it's a nice slide. And then also there's another paragraph which specifically states how much casualties the Ukrainian forces have experienced and how much the Russians have done. But before I go to the contents, just for interest's sakes. So this is an IT person. He's a gamer. He's a new generation guy. Firstly, you have to take a photograph of those documents. But I'm sure that in a top secret environment, cell phones are not allowed. So how did he take the photographs? That's a question one has to ask. He wouldn't have a cell phone with him. That is no. Unless he smuggled into a cell phone into his office. Secondly, the papers were not white. They were sort of yellowish paper. And then they were folded, as if you would fold them together, and then he would probably put it into his jacket or wherever he wants to put it, hide it. But it had to be printed. Now, all printers have records. They are usually, if you in a military situation like this, or there is a username and a password you have to type into your printer. So all your printings will be recorded against your name. That is how it works. As like I said, there's a record of everything that every person does. So he would have had to print it on A3 paper, which he then had to take and fold and then put it into his jacket. But again, why would you fold it? Why would you print it even out? Why not use a USB stick? This is a young, new generation. We don't have CDs anymore. We don't have portable drives anymore. Well, we do, but not that common anymore. We have USB sticks. And now we have USB sticks that go up to 250 gigabyte. That's more than enough information to put all the information like Snowden put onto that single type of USB drive. And it's much smaller and it can be hidden much better. And then you have access. And then you, in any case, go and distribute it. You plug it into your PC and then you upload it to your Discord server or whatever. And Bob's your uncle. Why have to take a photograph which you then have to attach to as an image to things which is then not readable? No, that doesn't make sense. That is not common, even for an infantile type of a young, inexperienced IT person. That's not. USBs are a way of doing these things. Now, also, if you look at the reports about this, and if you read these papers, there's nothing new that we don't know or haven't discussed before. Okay, I didn't discuss everything, but other channels have discussed most of the information that has been leaked. There were some numbers of these papers that have been changed, but apparently that has been identified. And it's usually about the casualties, but the casualties were much higher. And coming back to the whole information that was leaked, the only credible the only piece of information I would like to take out of this is a confirmation about the casualties. And because we have talked many times about it, and I've said many times to you, they always say 100,000 Ukrainians have died or 100,000 Russians have died. But you can switch it over and so on and so forth. But it was always, I talked many times about that it's a fallacy. There is no, that when von der Leyen talked about, had a slip of 100,000 Ukrainians dead. I told you, that is not credible. But in any case, so we have finally, in this one, we have between 16 and 17,000 Russian casualties and about 71,000 Ukrainian casualties. But these numbers make a lot more sense. This is not a full-out war. This is a special military operation. That means there is the conflict zones are limited. The military clashes are limited. Yes, it is a war of attrition. Yes, there are millions of rounds being fired, artillery rounds being fired. But not all of these hit target. And not all of these military rounds do kill people. They do maim them and they do injure them or wound the soldiers to various degrees. But we don't know how that is. So our information on the battleground about casualties is very, very limited. And it's usually skewed. And this is the first time that some credible numbers are coming out. Remember, I think after the first 2 or 3 months of the SMOs, the Russians made available their casualty numbers. And at that stage was about 5,000 people, 5,000 soldiers, which was the number that more or less expected. And given that before the first 3 months was the most military action that happened because the Russians ended on multiple fronts in Kiev. So that was credible. And after that, everything calmed down and there were limited confrontations and engagements. And that could have added another 10,000. Now, I just want to put something in this respect of 16,000 Russian soldiers died is not a small number. The average school in South Africa has about, say, 1,000 pupils. That means 16 schools of students have been killed. Where I was in the military army, a platoon is about 30 people, company is about 100 people, and then there were various companies. And I think the battalion had about 1,000 soldiers. Now, if 1,000 soldiers would stand on a parade, that's a hell of a lot of bodies. Now think about this. This is 16 of these battalions. 16 parades full of soldiers that were killed. This is seriously an amount of men. That's a lot of families that are missing fathers and sons and etc. But what's even worse, think about the Ukrainians. That is 71,000 Ukrainian soldiers. And to put that in its perspective, in South Africa we have, we call them rugby. In America they would call it NFL, football. We play in Britain the same rugby and so on. In any case, in South Africa, our stadiums can handle about 40,000 people. I do understand that the American stadiums can handle like 70, 80,000 and more spectators. Now think about that. If you're in America, next time you go to such a big venue, every single seat has had a soldier, Ukrainian soldier inside, and all of them were killed. That is a huge, huge, huge number. But it is a credible amount. It is a very sad situation where so many people had to die. And what I always ask, which I have said from the beginning when I started making these videos, why? Why do men have to die? Why do women and children have to die? Because at the end of the day, that if you understand a little bit about Ukraine and wars, it's all about money. Zelensky and his crew, they are making big profits, skimming off the money that is being donated to Ukraine from America and Europe. And they are repricing ammunition which they buy and so on at higher prices and get a kickback and so on. And anyway, those people are making the money. It is Joe Biden and his son that are making the money. It's other senators in America that are making the money. They get the kickback from the military-industrial complex. It is the CEO of the weapons manufacturer that made these wars, and they are making huge profits. And ordinary men and boys are dying or suffering permanent injuries. So there are always patriots and so on, but yes, so patriots are patriots, but they are the fools. They are the guys that have been indoctrinated into a form of patriotism and a belief that they have to protect their country, while their leaders are enriching themselves. But I'm deviating again. The point here is that I don't believe... okay, so I saw a video by Scott Ritter. Now, he's supposed to know what is going on there. And I cannot verify his story because I don't know. And I also don't know how to verify it, but that's not the point. He provides an explanation. And the explanation that he provides on why this guy had access to this type of information is that, firstly, he stated, I believe, and I'm on a correction, 1.4 American people in America, 1.4 million people in America have top secret clearance. So when he got top secret clearance, he got it only after a year and a half clearance, investigation into background and so on. But he says today the intelligence network is a lot more lax and you can get much easier access to top secret documents. Which is fine. I can understand that because when he was in the military, IT wasn't developed that much, so compartmentalizing access to documents wasn't that efficient, and you had to have personal authorization, or you had to have personal assessment whether you are a spy or not. Today, you can compartmentalize it. You can easily disseminate only certain documents to certain people via IT, and it's very simple. So you can restrict who has access to it. So I can understand that. But what he did say is that the information is not processed by a select group of people. What he actually said is that some people collect the information, then they send it to another department, then the other department analyzes, then those guys don't write the reports, then that guy sends it to another department or another group of people then who write the report, like secretaries. And then these guys, then they send it to another compartment then who arranges it into a nice presentation. Now, and that is how the system works. And this young man was only access to, he was one of the guys that was actually arranging the information into a nice presentation document, like cut and paste type of operation. And that is weird. There are several, okay, I'm not criticizing him. If it's true, then there's some seriously problems with the intelligence network in America. There's some serious problem if this is true. Firstly, the information you can have, guys, this is a highly classified operation. The involvement of America in the Ukrainian conflict must be very confidential. It's like when I talked about the Nord Stream pipeline explosion, sabotage. Utmost secrecy was absolutely essential for that operation. Now, the same what happens in Ukraine and so on, that has top secrecy requirements. That means only a select group of people should be involved. Now, I've said it before, here in South Africa, when I was in the armament industry, we had one engineer or two engineers and two technicians and all the rest, and we developed certain weapons. And we had 1/10 of the money of the people that had in America for the same type of weapon system, where they had 100 engineers and 100 times the yearly budget that we had. So it seems to my nephew also worked for Opel, and he was sent to Detroit to develop a certain gearbox and so on. And he complained that the Americans only wanted to play golf and didn't want to work. So again, he was one guy, and they were probably 50 engineers. So I can understand that if you look at also the Americans, they use a lot of people to do certain work. They basically are not that productive as they are claimed to be. But that's not the point. So I would, if I was to think how I would set up this story, this analysis type of information controlled analysis, I don't know how to express it in English, but I would say I have 200 guys. They can sit in maybe 2 or 3 offices or buildings that I can understand. But the one will sort of disseminate or collect the information. The other ones will analyze it. And the third person, which is a smaller group, will just do the documentation about that. And if I was in South Africa, I would have had 10 guys or 20 guys. But since we are in America, let's call it 200 guys, 200-300 guys. That's how I would see it. But to collect it in the CIA information, and then CIA is supposed to give their information to the, I don't know all the inside. Let's call it the NSA. And they, after NSA collective information, then send it to the Department of Defense, and then they interpret it. And what is the biggest problem that everybody always tells you about the Secret Service or the intelligence network in America? They don't work together. They don't share always information. That is their biggest problems. So why would they do it here? In any case, so it comes all together and then gets it to the Department of Defense, and the Department of Defense then sends it out to Massachusetts to some unknown guy to cut and paste a document and to make it neat. Are these guys too lazy? No. I don't understand that. That doesn't make sense to me. And these documents are only supposed to be disseminated to the top ranks of the military and the White House and the Department of Defense and whatever. But there's a small group of people that actually have to make the decisions what's going on and how they're going to continue and support Ukraine. Austin, he's supposed to have it. Biden has to have it. Blinken has to have it. Sullivan has to have it. Even those are a couple of people, and some generals and so on. Mills and so on. And some more. But that's about it. So you have the small group of, say, 20 decision makers, and then you have the support personnel of 200, 300 people. And those are the only people that must know about this information. A young guy in Massachusetts on a part-time basis shouldn't even have had access to this. And this makes me very curious. In fact, when I didn't know much about it, I thought that this guy, basically there was a meeting or presentation to some of these high commanders in Massachusetts for some other reason, or he was at the place where it was kept. And they all left, and one of the guys left his papers there, his packet of papers, one of the generals that got that, on the table. And this guy came by, and he grabbed it, and that's how he got the information, because physically, this is how it looks. Took the paper, take it with me. Put it inside here and try to slip it out. One time. This is how was my first impression about this. Because nothing else makes sense. But, so Ray McGowan, saw him again. He also worked for the CIA. And in this interview, he talked about, I can't remember the general's name, but he apparently was the third highest in command during the Vietnam War. And he was the guy that actually leaked the Pentagon Papers, which led with the final withdrawal out of Vietnam. But they only knew it that after this guy was on his deathbed, they found out that general actually leaked the information. But he always kept, but the reason why he did was that he saw that the leadership of America were on the wrong path. I think I'm bad with names. McNamara and so on, or some other general, wanted to increase the American troops by 260,000 troops. And at that stage, Johnson, who was president, wanted to give him those 260,000 American troops to go into North Vietnam. And this general thought to himself, this is not a good decision. And he has to stop it. And the way he had to stop it is he had to leak the plans and the papers and so on, Pentagon Papers, in order to create a type of scandal and then force Johnson not, because Johnson was prepared to give him those troops. Now, if you look again as Ukraine, I've talked many times about, there is no possibility for Ukraine to win or defeat Russia. Because firstly, it's existential for Russia, and Russia knows what the price is, and is willing to pay for it. So whatever casualties Ukraine can put on Russia, Russia will retaliate it and make it 7 to 10 times more casualties in Ukraine. You cannot have Goliath against Goliath, what David against Goliath. You know, it doesn't work like that. And the Western world's already type of starting to talk a negative others. Yes, they are, oh, we have to stand with Ukraine. Yes, we will do it till the end of the year. Then whatever they need and till the end day, what they require. But this is all bullshit. They said the same with Afghanistan, didn't they? No, they are looking, in my opinion, this is a form of off-ramp. They are looking slowly to press the button for the off-ramp. And my opinion is that either this is a deliberate leakage of information by a general or by a higher up that doesn't believe in the Ukrainian operation, and he believes it will just lead to further bloodshed and money wasting, and it will achieve nothing. And this is a preventative leak in order to change the path of thinking in the current American government, just like the Pentagon Papers. It's somebody who has some little bit more sense, that understands what's going on in the Ukrainian conflict, that's going to achieve nothing, who sees the reality on the ground in order to ensure that that happens and prevent a slaughter of it. Because you can, it doesn't matter how many tanks. So they want 260 tanks to be delivered. And what was it all? I cannot get it. So, yeah, 253 tanks, 380 infantry vehicles and APCs, 480 vehicles, 147 artillery pieces. Excuse me. So what are you going to do with that? Storm over the open fields into Saborizo, who has layered defensive positions. Kherson area, who has the wide river that nobody can cross at this stage. Northern part in Lugansk, where Liman and so on. No, those defensive positions have also been. And then you have the Russian Air Force. And in the same document, the air defense system is going to be depleted by the Ukrainians. So even before they can start with their offensive, their so-called offensive, they don't have the necessary air protection or air support. It's a ridiculous exercise. But now the West has to force Ukraine to perform and show that they can. No, it's just going to be a waste of lives. And after that, it will be the collapse of the Ukrainian army in any case. The most stupid and ridiculous decisions are being made currently. But it does enrich Zelensky and his cronies. It does increase the wealth of the Joe Biden and his family and so on, and the other senators. Money backers. Does do that. So long as they make money, hey, hunky-dory. In any case, so poor guy. I think he was used. If he wasn't used, then he was very stupid, but I believe more that he's used in order to go against or expose the follies or the stupidity of the American current regime. That's a bad word in any case. So that's my story for today, or my opinion, or my view. So until next time then, cheers.